Hi everybody and welcome to the Mental Toughness and Body Show. My name is Rob Evans and I'm your weight loss coach, health strategist and internationally published author, helping take your life, your business, your health and fitness and mindset from where you are right now to being unstoppable. And today I want to talk to you about courage. And this has been inspired by Oliver Stone's movie JFK. I remember going to the cinema to see this back in, I think it was 1995. And was just fascinated by it because it was for the first time that what they reported at the time was the most accurate conspiracy theory that had ever been put together in one film. And it was just absolutely fascinating. It was a very long film, over 2 hours, I think, 2.5 hours or something, and just the detail. Now, it was just on TV here recently, and I've watched it, I think a couple of times, 2 to maybe 3 times through, but not ever in one sitting because it's such a long film and I have such a busy schedule. And often at night, it requires a lot of thinking because there's so much dialogue and they cross across so many different scenarios that you've really got to pay attention. You've really got to be focused. And when I'm late at night, that's probably not a good spot for me. So I just finished watching some of it again today. And I recommend that if you have not seen that film, so Kevin Costner plays Jim Garrison, go and watch it. But don't be distracted when you're watching it because you've really got to focus on what's being said so that you can pick up on all the different things. And I wanted to take a look at that film and say, what can we learn, well, not just from the film, but from the story of the film? Because there are so many things that come out of that. And still to this day, there are different conspiracy theories around who assassinated JFK. And when you listen to everything that happened in Oliver Stone's JFK, which most of that was built around the book that Jim Garrison wrote about the trial. He later became a Supreme Court justice, and I think he passed away in 1983, something like that. Actually, I may not have that right. I haven't looked that one up, but it's something like that. And I wanted to have a look at the things that we can learn from it. So I think there's 5 things that we can learn from it. And the first one is don't believe everything that you read. So when you go through and listen to the film, now obviously it's a film and it's based on a book, but it's also Hollywood. The producer, Oliver Stone, he's obviously trying to create a story as well. So who knows what's fact because we still don't know the truth. But my first point is don't believe everything you see, read or hear. And isn't that so true for right now? I mean, at the time of recording this, you've got Donald Trump still fighting his presidency and in the court of law and everything, and they're talking about all these things that have been done wrong, and yet they've been thrown out of every single court. And look, we just don't know. You hear one thing, and the media is controlled by certain forces. And is it possible that the media influence what is reported? Absolutely, yes. And so think back to the 1960s when JFK was killed, and when you watch the film, you can hear the different threads of timelines of when information was presented. And essentially the film is saying that there is a conspiracy between the CIA, the FBI, the Dallas Police Department to essentially assassinate JFK so that, well, for money, basically. So that the Vietnam War could go ahead because that was like an $80 billion cash injection or something to the economy. Due to all the costs that were a part of war, and it sounds like a massive conspiracy because he wanted to achieve change, and the people that were in power didn't want to achieve change. Now, as the film points out, their history shows that there are examples where people that sit alongside those in power then kill the person in power. And they believe that that's what happened in this instance. That's what the film is essentially saying. But the jury found that it was too far-fetched, the people couldn't handle it, and it was thrown out of court. And Clay Shaw, who was the person that Jim Garrison took to court, saying that he was a ringleader in the whole thing. He denied the accusations, but years later it was discovered that yes, he was a CIA informant, and it was just a really interesting process. And the way that it's done in the film is just, I think it's done really, really well. And it just goes to show you, even back then, the way the media, the information got to the media about Lee Harvey Oswald. And again, you've got to watch the movie to see how all of that information flowed, and it just seemed so unlikely that it could happen as quickly as it did. And then obviously the theory of the magic bullet that took U-turns, stalled, did all kinds of different things. And so it dismissed the theory of the fact that there was just one shooter, so that Lee Harvey Oswald could not have acted alone because of where these other bullets have come from. So it's really interesting. So you just can't believe it. Even so back then, people were told things. I guess people would have just believed it because it's like, well, it's being said by the government. I think in the world we now live in with media, and especially with the social media and how quickly events happen and around the world, and then they're just reported, we know that stuff is made up. There are so many examples of things that have just been made up about people, about events, that you just can't believe everything that you read. And if you want to think about conspiracy theories, the one that we do know more about, but we don't know everything about, is Lance Armstrong. For over a decade, I defended this guy. I said, if he was guilty, I said, there's no way he could be guilty. He's the most tested person on the planet. And then I said, if he was guilty, there would have to be such a cover-up on so many different levels that it would seem unbelievable that nobody has come forward and said anything yet. And guess what? They're all keeping it a secret, and some still are. And even he still refuses to name some people in it. But the truth is partially out there. He did take drugs at all 7 Tour de France wins. He admitted that on live TV, being interviewed by Oprah. His movie, The Armstrong Lie, is fascinating. If you've never seen that, watch that. Really interesting. And it just goes to show you, he stood in front of a court of law and committed perjury because he said that he had never taken performance-enhancing drugs. He ruined people's lives. He forever damaged the Livestrong Foundation. And again, why did he do it all? It was all for money and power. That's all it was, for money and power. So you can't believe everything that you hear or read. You just can't. Number 2, well, as I've just said, conspiracies do exist. And I think you just need to realise that they've existed before, they exist now. JFK, the records have been sealed till 2038. But then when 2038 comes around, all it takes is a decision by whoever, the court, the government, whatever, to say, no, these records are going to remain sealed forever, or for another 50 years or another 100 years, whatever it is, and we may never exactly know the truth. I mean, evidence went missing. Apparently, the president's brain went missing. certain notes were destroyed. A lot of files were destroyed. Why? Because it all had incriminating information on it. I have seen a more recent conspiracy theory on JFK, which I think was done by an Australian forensic detective, something like that, and had suggested that actually one of the shots came from a Secret Service weapon by accident. And that's why that part was also covered up. They believe that as a shot went off and as the Secret Service ran to the car to jump onto the car, accidentally discharged a weapon. Who knows? We may never know the truth. Number 3, but we just remember they do exist. Think about Lance Armstrong. Think about the other conspiracy theories that exist within government that we never find out about. We just, for whatever reason, we just don't find out about. Number 3, don't live in fear. I mean, you can't let things like COVID immobilise you. You can't think that, gosh, let's face it, at any moment, some idiot around the world could press a button on a nuclear warhead and create devastation. And again, back in JFK's day, what they call it, the Bay of Pigs, is that what it was called? Something like that. All the problems they had with Cuba, the fact that they were just moments away from, like 20 minutes or something away, maybe it's less than that, from an all-out nuclear war between Russia and apparently some last-minute negotiations by JFK. They didn't want to do that. They averted a nuclear disaster. All it takes is someone to say, bang, here we go. But we can't live in fear of that. I mean, you don't want to live in a bomb shelter and say, well, just in case this happens, I'm going to live down here. You can't live like that. Life is too short. You need to be able to do the things that you want to do. But this probably leads into the 4th thing that I think we can learn, is that is to trust carefully. I think one of the things that I've noticed is the older I get, probably the harder it is for me to build the trust. And maybe that is because of past experience and the wrongs of the past. And I guess the more successful you become too, more people want to take advantage of you. So it takes more time to build that trust with me. And I guess when you've got crime in your own street and you look at somebody and you think, well, they're just a normal person. People don't walk around with criminal signs on their backs or anything. But you see these people and that that they're part of a gang and that they've stolen a car from just down the road from you. It just goes to show you that, well, geez, you just don't know, do you? You just can't trust everybody. And that's a specific example of happening in my street, where I helped the police catch 4 people that were part of a gang that stole a car and came back to do some more wrongdoing to that same house or the occupants. So I think you just got to be careful how you give out your trust. And it's not to not trust people, but I think you've got to do it carefully. And number 5, this is probably the biggest point that I took away from the whole movie. And if you think about it, everybody was against Jim Garrison standing up and being the only person still to this day, the only person that has sought to take somebody to trial for the assassination of JFK. Nobody else has had the courage to do that since. It had a dramatic impact on damaging his career. He did later go on to become a Supreme Court judge. But it had a massive impact on his personal relationship. It had a huge impact on his career. And he did it because he believed in the truth and he wanted the truth to get out there. And it just had me thinking, wow, when was the last time you did something that was really courageous? When did you have the courage to stand up for what was right? When did you have the courage to go forth and do something that you were really uncertain about? Like something in your business where you thought, gosh, if only I had the courage to do that, I wonder what that would look like on the other side. Because we do live in fear. We do live in hope that other things will happen, perhaps that go our way, but often we are not courageous. And I think we need to be our own hero. In being our own hero, we need to have the courage for ourselves. We need to stand up. We need to be able to say that I'm scared, but I'm going to do it anyway. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. It doesn't have to be something as big as finding who killed the President of the United States, who assassinated them. But it could be just as big in your world, saying, well, I need to have the courage to stand up for this. I need to have the courage to recognize that this relationship is dramatically damaging my health, my mental health, my relationship with my children, your business, your whatever else. You know, we all have different relationships in our life. Some of them can be quite toxic and damaging, and sometimes you need to have the courage to say, do you know what, this isn't okay. Think about family violence, for instance. How many people put up with family violence, particularly women, because they feel like there's no other choice? And sometimes you just need to have that courage to say, no more. I'm not going to put up with this anymore. And there have probably been 4, maybe 5 instances in my life where I've had to step up and be courageous. One of them was when my life was threatened, and I said, I'm not putting up with this anymore. I'm going to change my life. I'm going to change my body. I'm going to change everything about my physical me as well as my mindset as well. Another one was when I had to have the courage to talk to my now ex-wife and say, we can't be together anymore. And have that discussion with my 2 babies and explain to them why Mummy and Daddy weren't going to live together anymore. So hard. One of the hardest discussions I've ever had to have. One of them was when I saved someone's life from 3 drug dealers who abducted her, or trying to, and I stopped them. And they were going to kill her. Another one was, more recently, having the courage to leave a relationship that I thought was going to be my relationship for the rest of my life. I was so in love, I was so set to have the rest of my life with this beautiful woman, but realizing that it wasn't meant to be for us at this particular point in time. There was family violence involved, not by me, not by her, but by her ex-partner. And the impact that it was having on her was really bad. The impact that it was having on me was really disturbing, as well as all the children. There were 4 children involved, my 2 and her 2. And I guess the lack of willingness on her part to make a change. And that was really hard. That was really hard. And over 3 years, I just came to the conclusion that this was not the right environment for me at this time. And so, once again, I had to have one of those very tough discussions to say, we can't be together anymore. And as much as that still breaks my heart today, to think that you found that person that you want to spend the rest of your life with, but you know that it's such a toxic environment that it's too damaging for you and your children, that you have to leave it. And that requires courage. It really does. And it still pains me even to this day, to be honest. But if I look at my year in review, it has been quite remarkable. My best, I was determined at the start of this year to make it my best year for a number of reasons. And the physical me, the inner health of me, more income than I've ever made before, a greater success in my business than ever before. I wanted to do all of those things, and I did. And the year's not over yet. So who knows what can still happen. But sometimes you do have to stand up and be your own hero and realize that even though there are things in life that we don't want to do, sometimes you just have to have the courage to do it, because you know that you'll be better off on the other side of that discussion, of that act of courage. So when was the last time you were courageous? When or what in your life do you have to be courageous for right now? Maybe it's a business opportunity. Maybe it's something that I just talked about just then. I mean, one of the things that I've learned from many years of coaching clients and them telling me the most intimate of details about their personal lives, you don't know what goes on behind closed doors. And one thing that we've seen for sure here in Australia, and I'm sure it's happening around the world, but maybe not so much because we seem to have been locked down more than anyone else in the world, is the growing amount of domestic violence that occurs, and family violence. Now, when I say the word family violence, you immediately think of something that is, broken bones, bruises, blood, but it doesn't have to be that. The definition of family violence includes extortion, includes blackmail, it includes power. It could be around money, it could be just emotional distress, and that was the most of the stuff that we went through. It was that sense of power and constant communication, and there's some physical, but not the way that you would think of it. But you've got to have the courage to stand up for yourself sometimes. And sometimes you need to let people go so that they can find their own path through those journeys, because, I don't know, you can talk till you're blue in the face. If somebody doesn't want to change, they don't want to change. So you can't have the courage for someone else. Sometimes you just need to walk away. So courage. We could all do with it a little bit more perhaps. You've all got more than you think that you're perhaps capable of. The question is, when was the last time you used it, and when should you be using it now to take your life to the next level? Because if you want to go to a completely other level, then that is going to take courage. And it's going to result in pain. There's going to be heartache. There's going to be maybe financial loss. There's going to be some difficult moments that are going to really challenge you. But if you keep pushing through and you keep doing what you believe is right, then you will get to the other side a better person, and you'll have a better outcome. So be courageous. I believe in you. Believe in yourself. Stay safe. I'll see you tomorrow.